Today we're talking about something really fascinating, actual physical evidence of Bible stories that you can still find on Earth.
What a completely normal thing for a definitely human person to say.
These aren't just stories, there are places, artifacts, and even natural formations that match up with biblical events.
They may have both swiped right, but once archaeology showed up, it realized the Bible had used heavy filters and had definitely lied about its conquests. Classic catfish.
So let's dive into 10 physical proofs of Bible stories that still exist today.
Archaeology is the search for fact, not truth.
Welcome to Paulogia, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians. And today, we're looking at a video with nearly 1 million views, coming from a channel called Thy Kingdom Come, where only 2 of the 89 videos have even 1,000 views.
Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel, where we dive into the wonders of the Bible and explore the amazing ways it still connects to our world today.
I'm not saying this young channel is mass-produced by AI, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of these end with, was this video helpful? Yes, no. Nevertheless, something about this specific topic is clearly resonating with people. Based on the comments, there are a lot of Christians who are excited for a 5-minute listicle that gives them surface-level assurance by volume that everything in the Bible has been completely verified. They're praising Jesus for these finds. But do these claims hold up to scrutiny? Let's see.
First up, let's talk about Mount Sinai. According to the Bible, this is where God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. But did you know that there's a mountain in Saudi Arabia called Jebel al-Lawz that some believe could be the real Mount Sinai?
This is the first of several archaeological claims in this list that go back to Ron Wyatt, a nurse anesthetist who became a self-proclaimed biblical archaeologist despite having no formal training in archaeology, geology, or ancient history. Over a 22-year period from 1977 until his death, Wyatt claimed to have made over 100 extraordinary biblical discoveries. Few professional archaeologists can boast of more than one major find. I would be committing the genetic fallacy if I were to say that a discovery is suspect because it is from Wyatt, but the credibility of our primary sources is a factor in consideration. Josias, former curator of anthropology and archaeology at the Israel Antiquities Authority, has stated that Mr. Ron Wyatt is neither an archaeologist nor has he ever carried out a legally licensed excavation in Israel or Jerusalem. Beyond his absence of formal training, Wyatt's field methods were fundamentally unscientific, often relying on inappropriate equipment advertised in treasure hunter magazines, and employing techniques like prayer-guided searches rather than systematic archaeological survey. Throughout his career, Wyatt did not submit his findings or alleged lab reports for independent verification, and he never published discoveries in peer-reviewed archaeological journals. Instead, he disseminated his claims through his own newsletters, videos, and promotional materials. His supposed photographic evidence was invariably blurry or lost. Wyatt secured no permits for his alleged activity, making his actions illegal or imaginary. Wyatt's claims have been universally rejected, not only by secular archaeologists, but also by respected Christian scholars and even creationist organizations who would be naturally sympathetic to biblical confirmation. Answers in Genesis, Creation Ministries International, and the Institute for Creation Research have all published detailed critiques labeling his work as fraudulent. Wyatt's own sons admitted his father had planted evidence in acts of deliberate deception. Multiple experts who initially appeared to support his claims later retracted their endorsements after conducting proper scientific analysis. But that's enough about Ron Wyatt. He could be the worst amateur archaeologist in history, but his Mount Sinai claims still be entirely accurate. So let's take a look.
The top of the mountain is scorched black, as if it was burned, which matches the biblical description of God descending on the mountain in fire. Many believe this to be a real-life link to that powerful moment.
While the scorched black peak at Jebel al-Lawz, more accurately called Jebel Makla, in Saudi Arabia may appear dramatic, geological science provides a straightforward, natural explanation that undermines this biblical connection. The dark summit is not burned granite, but rather consists of Precambrian-era volcanic and metamorphic rocks, primarily dark hornfels and basalt, that formed millions of years ago through natural geological processes. These older, naturally dark rocks sit atop younger, lighter-colored granite that intruded beneath them, creating what geologists call a roof pendant. Furthermore, if the biblical account of divine fire were literally true, the intense heat would have caused the granite and other silt rocks to melt rather than scorch or burn like organic materials. This geological formation is common in volcanic regions worldwide and requires no supernatural explanation. More critically, the theory faces insurmountable biblical problems. Deuteronomy 1:2 specifies that Mount Sinai was exactly 11 days' journey from Kadesh Barnea, but Jabal al-Lawz is approximately 150 miles away, far too distant for the roughly 60-mile maximum that ancient travelers with livestock could cover in that time frame. Additionally, when the Bible describes Moses sending his Midianite father-in-law Jethro back to his own country of Midian while camped at Mount Sinai, this would be meaningless if Mount Sinai were already located in Midian itself. The archaeological evidence cited by proponents has been conclusively debunked by Saudi authorities, who determined that structures claimed to be Moses' altar are actually Nabatean Roman period quarrying remains dating over 1,200 years after the traditional Exodus period. While the visual appeal of a blackened mountain peak makes for compelling storytelling, both the physical sciences and careful biblical analysis point away from this Saudi Arabian location.
Next, we have the mysterious rock that Moses struck to provide water for the Israelites. The Bible says it was at a place called Horeb, and some believe they found it. This massive rock in Saudi Arabia stands out in the desert and is split down the middle, with evidence of water erosion on the rocks below.
The claim about a miraculous split rock in Saudi Arabia being the biblical rock Moses struck at Horeb faces a fundamental misunderstanding of both geology and biblical geography. This particular rock formation near Jabal al-Lawz is actually a common geological feature called a joint, a natural crack that forms in large rock masses and widens over thousands of years through well-documented processes like frost wedging and wind erosion. Saudi Arabia contains numerous similar formations, including the famous Al-Nasla rock, which displays an even more perfectly straight split, proving these features occur naturally throughout the region. The supposed water erosion at the base is typical flash flood patterns in desert environments, not evidence of a miraculous gushing spring. Beyond these geological realities, this location shares all the fundamental biblical geography problems we just spoke about for Jabal al-Lawz as Mount Sinai in the section we just covered. The claims surrounding this site originated with Ron Wyatt and were later promoted by amateur explorers without archaeological credentials. Professional archaeologists have found no evidence of a massive, late Bronze Age encampment in the area, despite the biblical account describing hundreds of thousands of Israelites camping there for nearly a year. While the location of the true Mount Sinai remains debated among scholars, the Saudi Arabian split rock can be confidently dismissed as a natural geological formation misidentified through pseudo-archaeological methods.
Now this one is really amazing. The Bible tells us that God parted the Red Sea so the Israelites could escape Pharaoh's army. Researchers have found what they believe to be ancient chariot wheels and other artifacts at the bottom of the Gulf of Aqaba, a possible crossing point of the Red Sea. It's as if the remains of Pharaoh's army are still resting there, hidden under the waters.
Ron Wyatt's supposed discovery of chariot wheels in the Gulf of Aqaba has been thoroughly debunked by the archaeological and scientific communities. First of all, these images in the video are not from the Red Sea find. Wyatt's write-ups made a big deal about the number of spokes being 4, 6, or 8 because he says that was Egyptian standard. In these alleged photos, the wheels have 5 spokes and 13 spokes, so that's just wrong. Reverse image search didn't find anything exact, but there are very similar pictures from Cuba, Croatia, and other places. No, these are the images that Ron Wyatt used for the initial claim. And here's some video footage. The chariot wheels are actually natural coral formations that grow in circular wheel-like shapes on the seafloor, a common occurrence in the Red Sea that can easily fool untrained observers. Marine biologists have documented how certain coral species naturally form these radial, disc-like structures that can bear a passing resemblance to ancient wheels, especially when viewed underwater. More fundamentally, the claim fails basic science. Wooden chariot wheels, leather harnesses, and bronze fittings could not survive 3,500 years in corrosive saltwater, which would have completely destroyed all organic materials within centuries and reduced any metal components to unrecognizable corrosion. Professional underwater archaeologists know that genuine ancient artifacts recovered from the sea are extremely fragile and require immediate, intensive conservation treatment to prevent them from crumbling to dust. Yet no such artifacts have ever been brought to the surface for scientific analysis. The Israel Antiquities Authority has explicitly stated that no legitimate archaeological excavations have been conducted at this site, and no peer-reviewed scientific journals have published any evidence supporting these claims. Additionally, the geological reality contradicts the narrative. The Gulf of Aqaba is a deep tectonic rift valley with no underwater land bridge, contrary to what would be needed for a mass crossing. The story persists largely due to internet hoaxes and misidentified natural formations, but it lacks any credible scientific foundation.
Our next stop takes us to the infamous cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, which were destroyed by fire and brimstone. In the area around the Dead Sea, researchers have found patches of high-purity sulfur embedded in ash-covered terrain. It's unlike any other sulfur found on Earth. This discovery matches the biblical account and serves as a reminder of God's justice on those cities.
And this is yet another tale from Ron Wyatt, and is equally dubious to the others. The claim that researchers have discovered unique, high-purity sulfur that proves the biblical destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of well-established geological processes. The sulfur nodules found in the Dead Sea region are not unlike any sulfur found on Earth. They are the predictable result of bacterial activity that occurs naturally in this environment. The Dead Sea region contains abundant sulfate minerals like gypsum, and when the sulfate-reducing bacteria break down these minerals in oxygen-free lake sediments, they produce elemental sulfur as a waste product. This microbial process routinely creates nodules of very high-purity sulfur, making their exceptional purity entirely unremarkable from a scientific perspective. The supposed ash-covered terrain is actually composed of soft sedimentary deposits called the Lysan Formation, which were laid down by an ancient lake that preceded the Dead Sea. Laboratory analysis has confirmed that this material is not ash from incinerated buildings, but rather gypsum-type minerals that naturally crumble and erode into city-like shapes over thousands of years, a common geological phenomenon known as Badlands topography. If these sulfur balls had truly rained down as burning projectiles onto these soft sediments, they would have left impact craters and disturbed the delicate rock layers, but no such evidence exists. Recently, a 2021 scientific paper that attempted to link a cosmic airburst to the destruction of an ancient city near the Dead Sea was retracted in 2025 due to serious errors in methodology and evidence of image manipulation. The scientific consensus is clear. These geological features result from ordinary natural processes that have been operating in this unique environment for millennia, not from any supernatural destruction.
According to the Bible, Lot's wife looked back at Sodom and Gomorrah and turned into a pillar of salt. Near the Dead Sea, there's a towering salt formation known as Lot's wife. It's an eerie sight and a solemn reminder of that moment when she disobeyed and was turned into a lasting symbol of God's judgment.
While the salt formation near the Dead Sea, known as Lot's wife, is indeed an impressive geological feature, the unstated implication that it represents the literal biblical figure transformed into salt cannot withstand scientific scrutiny. The pillar is composed of halite rock salt, which is the most water-soluble common mineral on Earth, dissolving over 50 times faster than limestone when exposed to rainfall. This extreme solubility means any specific salt structure would have dissolved and reformed countless times over millennia, making it impossible for the current pillar to be the same physical object from biblical times. Mount Sodom, where the pillar stands, is what geologists call a salt diapir, a massive dome of ancient salt deposits that has been slowly rising through overlying rock layers for hundreds of thousands of years. The mountain continues rising today at about 3.5 millimeters per year, as confirmed by satellite measurements. Geological research has shown that approximately 4,000 years ago, an earthquake caused the salt cave to collapse in this area, creating the geological conditions for pillar formation. However, the original structure from that collapse would have long since dissolved, and what visitors see today is a more recent formation shaped by ongoing erosion in the same location. The Dead Sea region contains multiple salt formations that have been identified as potential candidates for Lot's wife, including formations on both Israeli and Jordanian sides of the sea. New salt pillars regularly emerge as the Dead Sea's water level drops, demonstrating that pillar creation is a continuous natural process. The biblical story serves as what scholars call an etiological narrative, a story created by ancient peoples to explain striking natural phenomena in their landscape. Such explanatory tales were common throughout the ancient Near East, providing theological meaning to geological features that would have seemed mysterious to pre-scientific observers.
Let's talk about Noah's Ark. The Bible says it came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Many believe that they found remains of a large wooden structure buried in the ice on Mount Ararat in Turkey. While the findings are still under debate, the location and dimensions match the biblical description, and explorers have found petrified wood on the mountain.
While this sounds compelling, the scientific evidence tells a very different story. The Bible actually says Noah's Ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, plural, referring to a broad mountainous region in ancient times, not specifically the single volcanic peak we call Mount Ararat today. More importantly, geologists have established that Mount Ararat itself is a relatively young volcano that formed after any biblical flood would have occurred, making it impossible for the Ark to have landed on a mountain that didn't yet exist. The large wooden structure claims primarily refer to two sites that have been thoroughly investigated by professional geologists. The most famous is the Duru-Pinar Formation, a boat-shaped geological feature that has been conclusively identified as a natural rock formation called a syncline, created when sedimentary layers fold and erode over time. What appear to be wooden beams and metal fittings are actually natural mineral deposits of iron-rich compounds like limonite that formed along rock fractures. The second major candidate, known as the Ararat anomaly, exists only in low-resolution satellite photos and appears to be a simple rock outcropping whose shape changes with snow cover and viewing angle. Most tellingly, every piece of alleged petrified wood from the mountain that has been subjected to proper radiocarbon dating has proven to be medieval in age, around 1200 to 1300 years old, rather than the 4500 years old for Noah's Ark. These samples likely come from Byzantine-era Christian structures built on the mountain by monks, who also considered it a holy site. Even prominent creationist organizations like Answers in Genesis have concluded that Noah's Ark has not been found on Mount Ararat and is unlikely to be there, with their own geologists confirming the mountain's post-flood formation.
Remember the Pool of Bethesda? It's where Jesus healed a paralyzed man. Archaeologists have discovered the remains of this ancient pool in Jerusalem, matching the description found in the Gospel of John. It's incredible to think that you can visit this place today, where one of Jesus' miracles happened.
The video oddly understates what archaeologists discovered near Jerusalem's St. Anne Church. Not just any pool, but a sophisticated twin pool complex that could theoretically accommodate the Gospel of John's puzzling description of 5 porticos, covered walkways. This detail has long baffled scholars since a 5-sided pool seemed archaeologically impossible. But the double pool design allows for 4 surrounding colonnades plus 1 central dividing colonnade. This apparently remarkable confirmation faces some problems that might make us skeptical about the identification. The archaeological evidence is more ambiguous than typically presented. The site hasn't been fully excavated because modern houses sit on top of portions of the ancient complex, making any reconstruction of the porticos necessarily speculative. Multiple architectural arrangements are actually possible. Some scholars suggest the complex could have supported 7 porticos rather than 5, meaning archaeologists may be forcing the evidence to match the biblical text rather than letting the text speak for itself. The site's history spans nearly a millennium with continuous modifications. For example, archaeologists date the visible remains of the colonnades to the 2nd century BC, associated with the Roman period and the healing cult of Asclepius, making it impossible to determine exactly what configuration existed around 30 AD when Jesus supposedly visited. The pool served conflicting functions that create narrative contradictions. One leading theory suggests they operated as a Jewish ritual bath for purification before entering the nearby temple. But this makes no sense given John's descriptions of crowds of disabled people, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed, who would have been considered ritually impure and largely barred from temple precincts. The alternative theory that it was a pagan healing shrine fits the healing narrative better, but the definitive archaeological evidence for such a shrine dates to the 2nd century AD, long after Jesus' time. Scholars such as Raymond A. Brown and Craig Koster point out that John's Gospel is highly symbolic, and many scholars consider the 5 porticos and the 38-year illness as deliberate narrative constructs. These details likely serve as midrashic or theological function rather than historical reportage. While the site plausibly inspired the author of John, we can't demonstrate that it literally matches what existed in 30 AD, or that Jesus ever visited it.
Jericho is one of the oldest cities in the world, and it's also the place where the walls famously fell after the Israelites marched around them. Archaeologists have found evidence of collapsed walls dating back to the correct time period, suggesting that something did indeed cause the city's walls to tumble.
While the video correctly notes that Jericho is among the world's oldest cities, the archaeological evidence actually contradicts rather than supports the biblical conquest narrative. The claim that archaeologists have found collapsed walls fundamentally misrepresents the scientific findings. The most rigorous archaeological investigations, particularly Dame Kathleen Kenyon's definitive excavations from 1952 to 1958, revealed that the impressive collapsed walls at Tel es Sultan, ancient Jericho, actually date to around 1550 BCE, approximately 150 years before even the earliest possible date for Joshua's conquest, according to biblical chronology. These walls belong to a Middle Bronze Age city that was destroyed, most likely by Egyptian forces during their campaigns against the Hyksos rulers. More critically, Kenyon's stratigraphic analysis demonstrated that during the Late Bronze Age, 1550 to 1200 BC, when the biblical conquest would have occurred, Jericho was largely abandoned and unfortified.
Look, my liege! Camelot! It's only a model.
There was no mighty walled city for the Israelites to besiege. At most, a small, poor, unwalled settlement existed briefly during this period. The archaeological consensus, supported by over a century of scientific excavation, is that the conquest story was likely composed centuries later as an ideological tale to explain the impressive ancient ruins that Iron Age Israelites could see at the site. The walls of Jericho did not fall to Joshua's forces because, during the relevant time period, there were no substantial walls to fall.
In the book of Kings, we read about King Hezekiah, who built a tunnel to secure Jerusalem's water supply against an Assyrian siege. This tunnel still exists today. It's an engineering marvel from ancient times, stretching about 1,750 feet and bringing water from the Gihon spring to the Pool of Siloam. Visitors can even walk through this tunnel, experiencing a piece of biblical history firsthand.
While the Siloam Tunnel is indeed an impressive ancient engineering achievement that connects the Gihon Spring to the Pool of Siloam, attributing it specifically to King Hezekiah around 701 BC, is plausible but controversial among archaeologists. The tunnel's identification with the biblical king rests primarily on connecting two different biblical accounts in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. But these texts describe the water project in vague terms that could refer to various Jerusalem waterworks. More problematically, recent archaeological excavations by specialists Ronnie Wright and Eli Shukron have uncovered pottery and building foundations that suggest the tunnel system was actually constructed and then blocked off by the late 9th or early 8th century BC, potentially a full century before Hezekiah's reign. Additionally, geological analysis indicates the tunnel would have required at least 4 years to complete, making it an implausible emergency project for an imminent siege. The famous Siloam inscription found in the tunnel, while confirming the remarkable counter-excavation method, notably makes no mention of any king or official, unusual for a royal project, and some scholars argue its script may date to a much later period. Even the 2003 radiocarbon dating study, that supposedly confirmed an 8th century date, faces serious technical limitations due to the Hallstatt Plateau, a period where carbon-14 dating is not precise enough to affirm a specific century. Rather than definitive proof of biblical history, the tunnel represents a complex, multi-generational story of Jerusalem's water management that likely predates and postdates and bears no direct relationship to the specific crisis described in the biblical account of Hezekiah's preparations for the Assyrian siege.
Here's one of the most debated yet fascinating claims. Some researchers believe they found evidence of Jesus' blood on what they suspect could be the Ark of the Covenant. Ron Wyatt, an archaeologist, claimed to have found traces of blood in a hidden chamber under the site of the crucifixion. While not universally accepted, this claim is incredible and speaks to the lasting significance of Jesus' sacrifice.
Most debated is a massive understatement, as even for a man who claimed to have found Noah's Ark, Red Sea chariot wheels, Mount Sinai, and dozens more Bible finds, combining Jesus' blood with the Ark of the Covenant is Ron Wyatt's jump the shark moment for sure. The alleged discovery took place at the Garden Tomb in Jerusalem, a popular Protestant pilgrimage site managed by the Garden Tomb Association. Crucially, the association itself has issued formal statements completely refuting these claims, confirming that despite observing Wyatt's excavations firsthand, nothing was ever discovered to support his claims, nor have we seen any evidence of biblical artifacts or temple treasures. The scientific aspects of the claim are particularly problematic. Blood cannot remain alive for 2,000 years. Cells die within hours of being removed from the body, and the DNA parts would have completely degraded centuries ago through natural chemical processes. The claim that this ancient blood was somehow tested and found to contain living cells that could divide is biologically impossible. Modern DNA analysis struggles to recover even tiny fragments of genetic material from ancient samples under ideal preservation conditions, making his alleged chromosome analysis scientifically absurd. Despite claiming to have made one of history's most significant discoveries, no verifiable evidence has ever been produced. No laboratory reports, no photographs, no samples for independent testing, and no peer-reviewed documentation. Even Wyatt's own organization admits they can provide no conclusive evidence for the discovery. The Israel Antiquities Authority, which oversees all archaeological work in the region, has categorically dismissed these claims as fraudulent, noting that no licensed excavation was ever conducted. When extraordinary claims are made without extraordinary evidence to support them, and when every relevant authority and expert has rejected them, the responsible conclusion is that they are simply not credible.
Isn't it amazing how these physical remnants align with the Bible?
Isn't it amazing how, with a little digging, almost every one of these so-called physical proofs turns out to be either a misunderstood natural formation, an ordinary archaeological site repurposed for religious storytelling, or an outright hoax?
It's Professor Rain!
And it would have been mine if it hadn't been for those meddling kids.
Whether it's a rock with a crack, a mountain with dark rocks, or a city whose walls fell 150 years too early, it confirms how eager some people are to find confirmation, even if they have to manufacture it themselves.
Each one serves as a tangible reminder that the stories we read aren't just stories. They're events that happened in real places, with real people, leaving real marks on the earth.
While there's certainly value in visiting the landscapes and ruins of the ancient Near East, they're fascinating windows into human history. Mistaking geology for theology, or tourist attractions for divine intervention, isn't helping anyone better understand reality.
Thank you for joining me today on this journey through the Bible's most remarkable archaeological wonders. If you're as fascinated as I am, be sure to subscribe for more incredible stories and insights into God's Word.
And tap on the thumbnail on screen now, and I'll see you over there.
See you next time.
Later.